The first time she answered my phone, I was in the middle of closing a seven-figure deal with a pharmaceutical distributor in Singapore. My personal cell buzzed against the glass conference table, and I watched Marcus's name flash across the screen before the call went to voicemail. Nothing unusual there. We'd been together 3 years, engaged for 6 months, and he knew better than to interrupt my work calls. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. What I didn't know was that Marcus had stopped by my apartment using the key I'd given him for emergencies, had rifled through my nightstand, found my backup phone, the one I kept charged for international travel, and handed it to her, like it was his to give. The second call came 20 minutes later. Same phone. This time, I answered, stepping out of the conference room with an apologetic gesture to my colleagues. "Hello?" I said, expecting Marcus's voice. Instead, a woman's laugh tinkled through the speaker, bright and performative. "Oh," she actually answered. "Marcus, baby," she picked up. My stomach dropped 3 floors. The sounds behind her voice painted a picture I didn't want to see. His apartment, the leather couch I'd helped him pick out, music playing low in the background, our playlist, the one we'd built together over lazy Sunday mornings. "Who is this?" I kept my voice level, professional. Years of negotiating contracts with men who thought they could intimidate me had taught me to never let them hear you break. "This is destiny." She said it like the word should mean something to me, like I should have been expecting this call. "Marcus is in the shower, but he wanted me to let you know he won't be able to make dinner tonight. Or any night, really. We're together now." The Singapore distributor knocked on the glass, pointing at his watch. $500,000 in quarterly revenue waiting on my signature. I held up one finger. "Put Marcus on the phone." "I just told you, he's in the... now." Something in my tone must have penetrated her performance because the laughter died. Muffled sounds followed, whispered conversation I couldn't quite make out. Then Marcus's voice, tight with irritation. "Olivia, look, I was going to call you later. You gave her my phone." Silence, then. "It was in your drawer. I needed to charge mine and... You gave a stranger access to my personal device, my work contacts, my financial information, my biometric data is on that phone, Marcus. Jesus, it's not that serious. And she's not a stranger. She's..." I hung up. My hands were steady as I walked back into the conference room, smiled at the distributor, and signed the contract with my usual flourish. We shook hands. We made small talk about the weather in Singapore versus Seattle. I laughed at his joke about American coffee. Then I excused myself, walked to the women's restroom on the 14th floor of the Columbia Tower, and threw up everything I'd eaten that day. That was 3 weeks ago. Now I sat in my corner office at Chen Medical Solutions, the pharmaceutical supply company I'd built from nothing after my residency, and watched the rain streak down the floor-to-ceiling windows. Seattle in November was all gray skies and bitter cold, matching my mood perfectly. The engagement ring still sat in my jewelry box at home, 2 carats, emerald cut, picked out by Marcus after I'd dropped enough hints about what I wanted. I hadn't been able to bring myself to deal with it yet. My assistant, Priya, knocked twice before entering. She was the only person I'd told about Marcus, and only because she'd found me crying in my office the day after that phone call. "The detective called again," she said, her expression unreadable. "Detective Morrison from Seattle PD Fraud Division. 3rd time this week." I looked up from my laptop, where I'd been reviewing supply chain logistics for our new distribution center in Portland. "What did you tell them?" "Same as before, you're in meetings all day." Priya set a pink message slip on my desk. "But Olivia, they're getting more insistent. They specifically said they need to speak with you regarding Marcus Chen and that it's urgent." Marcus Chen. He'd taken my last name, even though we weren't married yet, said it made him feel closer to me, like we were already a family. I'd thought it was sweet at the time. Now I knew better. Now I understood that Marcus Reed from Tacoma, with his maxed out credit cards and his creative approach to employment history, had become Marcus Chen, fiancé of Dr. Olivia Chen, CEO of Chen Medical Solutions. Forward them to my cell, I said. The business line, not my personal. Priya nodded and left, closing the door with a soft click. I stared at the message slip, at Detective Morrison's name written in Priya's neat handwriting. 3 calls in 1 week. That wasn't standard procedure for anything simple. My personal cell, the one I'd had to factory reset and set up from scratch after getting it back from Marcus's apartment, buzzed with a text from my brother David. Mom wants to know if you're still bringing Marcus to Thanksgiving. She's planning the seating chart. I deleted the message without responding. Dealing with my family's questions about the broken engagement could wait. Right now, I needed to understand why the police were looking for Marcus. The call came at 4:47 p.m., just as I was considering leaving early to avoid traffic on I-5. My business line, as requested. Dr. Chen. This is Detective Rachel Morrison with Seattle PD's Fraud Investigation Unit. Thank you for taking my call. Her voice was professional, measured, the kind that had delivered bad news too many times to count. I put down my pen and straightened in my chair. Detective, my assistant said you'd been trying to reach me. How can I help you? I need to ask you some questions about Marcus Reed, also known as Marcus Chen. My understanding is that you're engaged to him? Were. I corrected automatically. We ended things recently. A pause. I heard papers shuffling. I see. And when was the last time you had contact with Mr. Reed? 3 weeks ago. Why? What's this about? Dr. Chen, are you familiar with a company called Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers? My blood went cold. No. Should I be? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. According to our investigation, Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers has been operating as a legitimate-seeming business entity, ordering medical supplies and equipment from various distributors across the country. However, they never pay their invoices. The business appears legitimate enough on paper that many suppliers extend credit, sometimes significant credit, before realizing they've been defrauded. I was already opening my laptop, pulling up our accounts receivable database. And you think Marcus is involved? Dr. Chen, the business address listed for Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers is your company's address. The phone number routes to what appears to be a virtual receptionist service, but the business email uses a domain that's 1 letter off from your company's domain, and the banking information provided to vendors uses my company's tax ID number. I'd found it. 3 invoices, all from vendors I recognized, all flagged by our accounting department as fraudulent attempts. I'd assumed it was standard identity theft, had filed the reports with the FTC, and moved on. Detective, I reported this weeks ago. We caught it before any money changed hands. You caught 3. We've identified 17 vendors across 5 states who weren't so lucky. Total damages are approaching $800,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $800,000. Stolen using my company's information, my reputation, my carefully built credibility in an industry that ran on trust. Marcus has access to your business information, Detective Morrison asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Had, I said, my voice hollow. He had my laptop password, my email login. I thought, we were planning to get married. I trusted him. I need you to come down to the station, Dr. Chen. Tomorrow, if possible. We need a formal statement and I have some documents I'd like you to review. Of course. What time? We settled on 10 a.m. I hung up and sat in the gathering darkness of my office, watching the city lights flicker to life below. Seattle at night was beautiful from up here, all glittering potential and hidden shadows. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Olivia? The woman's voice was different now, stripped of its earlier brightness. Scared. Destiny? He said you'd try to cause trouble. He said you were crazy, that you couldn't handle the breakup, that you'd make things up to get back at him. Her words tumbled out fast, tripping over each other. But the police just called. Here, on your phone. Looking for Marcus. Something about fraud? I leaned back in my chair, a cold smile touching my lips. Where is he? I don't know. He left. He heard me talking to the detective and he grabbed some things and left. Said he had to take care of something. That was 6 hours ago. How long have you known him, Destiny? Silence. Then quietly, 4 months. And how long has he been telling you about me? 3. Her voice broke on the number. He said you were his ex. That you'd broken up but you wouldn't move on. He showed me texts you sent, these desperate messages begging him to come back. I felt something twist in my chest. Marcus had always been good at manipulation, at showing people exactly what they wanted to see. I'd thought I was different, thought I'd been smart enough to see through it. Apparently, I'd just been useful enough that he'd bothered to keep the mask on longer. Those texts were fake, I said. I ended things. He didn't take it well. He said he loved me. Destiny's voice was small now, childlike. He said we were going to move to California together. Start over. He just needed to liquidate some assets first. What assets? I don't know. He said it was complicated. Business stuff. He needed my help with some phone calls, some emails. Said he couldn't do it himself because you were stalking him, monitoring his accounts. She laughed, bitter and brittle. I thought I was helping him escape an abusive relationship. God, I'm so stupid. You're not stupid, I said, and meant it. You're a victim. Just like me. Just like however many other women he's done this to before us. There were others? I thought about the detective's careful questions, the way she'd asked about Marcus's access to my information. Fraud on this scale didn't happen overnight. This was practiced, refined, someone who'd done it before and knew exactly how to work the system. What did he have you do? I asked. The phone calls, the emails. What exactly did he ask you to do? I placed orders for medical supplies. He said it was for a business he was starting, that he needed someone else to do it because you were blacklisting him with vendors. Destiny's breathing was ragged now, panicked. Oh my God! Oh my God, I helped him, didn't I? I'm an accomplice. They're going to arrest me. Listen to me. I kept my voice calm, the same tone I used when negotiating high-stakes deals. Did you know the business was fake? No, I swear. He showed me paperwork, official-looking documents. Did you benefit financially from any of these transactions? No, nothing. He said the money would come later, once the business was established. Then you're a victim too. But you need to call Detective Morrison back right now and tell her everything. Every order you placed, every email you sent, everything Marcus told you to do. Do you understand? Will that keep me out of jail? I can't promise that. But it's your best chance. And Destiny? Do you still have my phone? Yes. Hold on to it. Don't let Marcus get it back. There might be evidence on it, and the police will need it. She agreed, her voice shaking, and hung up. I sat in the darkness of my office and tried to piece together the timeline. Marcus and I had met 3 years ago at a medical conference in San Francisco. He'd been charming, attentive, genuinely interested in my work. Or so I'd thought. Now I wondered if he'd been at that conference specifically to meet me, to identify his next target. We'd dated for 6 months before I'd introduced him to my family. Another year before, he'd moved into my apartment in the Queen Anne neighborhood. By then, I'd already given him access to everything: my home, my finances, my business contacts. I'd even added him to my company health insurance, listed him as a beneficiary on my life insurance policy. My laptop dinged with an email notification. I glanced at the screen and felt my heart stop. The sender was me. Or rather, someone using my email address, though not from my actual account. The subject line read, "Urgent, account verification required." I opened it, already knowing what I'd find: a sophisticated phishing attempt designed to look like it came from our banking institution, asking for account verification due to suspicious activity. If I clicked the link, it would take me to a fake website that would steal my login credentials. But what chilled me wasn't the phishing attempt itself. Those were common enough. It was the recipient list. Every single vendor we'd worked with in the past 2 years. Every business contact I had, every hospital, clinic, and pharmacy that had trusted Chen Medical Solutions with their supply needs. Marcus wasn't just stealing money, he was trying to destroy my company's reputation entirely. I forwarded the email to Detective Morrison with a brief explanation, then opened my secure email and sent a message to every contact on that list, warning them of the fraud attempt and providing verification protocols. It would take hours. I didn't care. At 11 p.m., Priya texted me. "Still at the office? I'm worried about you." "Going home soon," I lied. "Thanks for checking in." But I didn't go home. Instead, I pulled up every financial record I had, every business document Marcus might have had access to: tax returns, bank statements, vendor contracts, business licenses, articles of incorporation. I made copies of everything, organized it all into folders, prepared it for tomorrow's meeting with Detective Morrison. And I thought about Destiny, sitting in what was probably a small apartment somewhere, staring at my phone and wondering how her life had imploded so completely. 3 months ago, she'd thought she was in love. Now she was realizing she'd been a tool, used by someone who saw people as resources to be exploited. I knew exactly how she felt. My cell phone rang at 1:30 a.m. Marcus's number. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. "Olivia." His voice was smooth, controlled. The voice he used when he was trying to sell me on something. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. The police are looking for you." "I know. That's what I'm calling about. Look, some business deals went sideways, that's all. Nothing criminal, just some contracts that fell through, and vendors getting nervous about payment schedules. It happens all the time in business. You know that. Using my company's information, my tax ID, my reputation. I was trying to help you expand. You're always talking about wanting to grow, to reach new markets. I was just laying the groundwork for fraud. The word you're looking for is fraud, Marcus. $800,000 worth." Silence. Then, in a different voice, colder. "You don't understand the situation you're in. Enlighten me. All those documents you signed over the past year, the ones I said were insurance updates, beneficiary changes, that cute little power of attorney you gave me so I could handle some paperwork while you were in Singapore? I've been very careful about what I've had you put your name on." My blood turned to ice. "What are you talking about? You're not the victim here, Olivia. You're my business partner. At least, that's what the paperwork shows. Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers lists you as co-owner. Those purchase orders? They have your signature. Digital copies, sure, but your actual signature, scanned from documents you signed months ago. The emails came from your IP address. Or at least, they'll trace back to your apartment's Wi-Fi, since I sent them from there. You forged my signature. Did I? Or did you sign documents without reading them? Because I'm pretty sure there's a notarized form somewhere with your signature right next to mine, establishing Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers as a joint venture. I even have emails from your account. Not a fake one. Discussing business plans. You're very eloquent when I write as you. I couldn't breathe. Everything he was saying, it was possible. I'd signed insurance documents, beneficiary forms, power of attorney paperwork. I'd trusted him with my email password, my apartment keys, my life. The police won't believe that, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Won't they? Think about it. Successful CEO, always traveling, always busy. Delegates a lot of work to her fiancé, gets caught in a fraud scheme and suddenly claims she knew nothing about it? That she was the victim? He laughed, low and mean. You know what they'll think. They'll think you're trying to throw me under the bus to save yourself. Destiny will testify. She'll tell them you manipulated her. Destiny? The name dripped with contempt. Destiny is an unemployed bartender with a drug possession charge from 2 years ago. You're a successful CEO. Who's more believable as the mastermind here? My hands were shaking. I gripped the desk edge hard enough to hurt. What do you want? Smart girl. I always knew you were smart. His voice softened, became almost gentle. I want you to make this go away. Tell the detective you made a mistake, that Pacific Northwest Medical Suppliers was a legitimate business venture that you'd forgotten about. Say you thought it was identity theft at first, but now you remember signing the paperwork. Pay back the vendors, settle the accounts. You can afford it. That's almost $1 million. Consider it the cost of your freedom and your reputation, because if this goes to trial, if we end up in court, every detail of your life is going to be dissected. Every business deal you've ever made, every corner you've ever cut, every gray area you've ever operated in. And trust me, Olivia, nobody builds a multi-million-dollar company in their 30s without operating in some gray areas. He was right. There were things in my past, aggressive negotiation tactics, contracts that had skirted the edge of legality, vendors I'd pressured into bad deals. Nothing criminal, nothing I couldn't justify, but in the wrong light, with the wrong prosecutor. I need to think about this, I said. You have until noon tomorrow. After that, I start making my own calls. There's a reporter at the Seattle Times who's very interested in stories about corporate fraud, especially when it involves a local success story like yours. He hung up. I sat in my dark office and watched the city sleep below me. Everything I'd built, 12 years of work, of sacrifice, of proving to every man who'd ever underestimated me that I was smarter, tougher, more relentless than they'd ever be. All of it hung in the balance now. Marcus had planned this. Maybe not from the beginning, but at some point in our relationship, he'd stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as a mark. He'd carefully constructed a paper trail that would implicate me, had positioned himself as the lesser villain while making me look like the mastermind. And the worst part? It might actually work. My phone buzzed with an email. Detective Morrison, responding to the phishing email I'd forwarded her. Dr. Chen, we need to move up our meeting. Can you come to the station tonight? This is more urgent than I initially indicated. I checked the time. 2:15 a.m. Whatever she wanted to discuss couldn't wait until morning. I'll be there in 30 minutes, I replied. The Seattle Police Department's fraud division operated out of a nondescript building in the International District, all fluorescent lights and institutional beige walls. Detective Morrison met me in the lobby, a woman in her late 40s with tired eyes and graying hair pulled back in an efficient bun. Thank you for coming, she said, shaking my hand. I know the hour is unusual, but we've had some developments. She led me through a maze of cubicles to a small conference room. Inside, a man in his 50s wearing a rumpled suit sat with several manila folders spread across the table. Dr. Chen, this is FBI Special Agent Patrick Torres. He's been investigating a series of fraud cases across the western states. FBI. My stomach dropped. This was bigger than I'd thought. Dr. Chen. Agent Torres stood and shook my hand, his grip firm and evaluative. Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss. I sat. Detective Morrison closed the door and took the seat across from me. First, Agent Torres said, I want to assure you that you're not under investigation. Based on what we've learned so far, you appear to be a victim in this case, not a perpetrator. However, that could change depending on what we discover moving forward. I understand. Good. Now, I need you to understand something else. Marcus Reed, and that's his real name, by the way, not Chen, is not a small-time fraudster. We've been tracking him for almost 3 years across 6 states. He uses the same pattern every time. Identify a successful woman in a position of professional power, usually in medical, pharmaceutical, or financial services. Court her, gain her trust, get access to her business information. Then he establishes fraudulent business entities using her credentials and runs a sophisticated purchase order scam. My mouth went dry. How many women? You're number 7, that we know of. There may be others who never reported it. 7. The word came out as a whisper. Detective Morrison leaned forward. In every case, Reed carefully constructs a narrative where the woman appears complicit. He manufactures evidence, forged signatures, fake email trails, sometimes even photographic evidence of the woman working on the fraudulent business. Then, when law enforcement gets involved, he threatens to expose the woman as the mastermind if she doesn't pay to make the problem go away. How much have his other victims paid? Anywhere from $200,000 to over $1 million. Most of them choose to settle quietly rather than risk their reputations and freedom. I thought about Marcus's midnight phone call, his smooth assurance that I could make this go away. The pattern was clear now. He'd done this 6 times before, and 6 times he'd gotten away with it. Why hasn't he been arrested? Agent Torres's expression hardened. Because he's good at what he does. He never stays in one place long enough for us to build a solid case. He uses layers of identity obfuscation, shell companies, virtual business addresses. By the time we get close, he's moved on to the next target. And his victims, understandably, are often too scared or embarrassed to cooperate fully with the investigation. What's different this time? You are. Detective Morrison slid a folder across the table. You reported the fraud immediately. You didn't try to hide it or handle it quietly. That gives us a window we haven't had before. But Dr. Chen, we need more than that. We need you to help us catch him. I opened the folder. Inside were photos of Marcus with different women in different cities: Portland, Denver, Phoenix, San Diego. In each photo, he looked slightly different: longer hair, shorter hair, with glasses without. But it was unmistakably him. And in each photo, he had the same expression: confident, charming, proprietary. The look of someone who owned the woman beside him. What do you need me to do? Agent Torres pulled out a small device about the size of a credit card. Reed called you tonight, didn't he? Made threats? Tried to convince you to pay to make this go away? I nodded. He'll call again. Tomorrow? Probably around the deadline he gave you. When he does, we need you to record the conversation. But more than that, we need you to play along. Make him think you're considering his offer. Get him to give you details about how he wants you to make the payment, where he wants you to transfer the money. The more specific he gets, the better. You want me to pretend I'm going to pay him off. We want you to help us draw him out, Detective Morrison corrected. Reed is cautious, but he's also arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. He's gotten away with this 6 times, so he's confident in his pattern. But if we can get him to specify account numbers, meeting locations, any concrete details about the fraud, We can build a case that will actually stick. I thought about the other 6 women. Successful, capable, intelligent women who'd been conned out of hundreds of thousands of dollars. Women who'd paid blackmail money to protect reputations they'd spent years building. Women who were probably still dealing with the financial and emotional aftermath while Marcus moved on to his next victim. What happens after I record the call? We move fast, Agent Torres said. We trace the account information he provides, get warrants, and bring him in before he realizes what's happening. But Dr. Chen, I need to be clear about something. If you do this, if you help us, Reed will know you cooperated. And he will try to destroy you publicly. He'll leak every piece of fake evidence he has, twist every detail to make you look complicit. It will be ugly. But you can prove it's fake? Eventually, yes. But that doesn't mean there won't be damage in the meantime. Your reputation will take a hit. Your business might suffer. People will question your judgment. The media will have a field day. I looked at the photos again. At Marcus with his arm around women who'd trusted him, loved him. Women who'd thought they were building futures with someone real. If I don't help you, he'll just do this to someone else. Yes, Detective Morrison said simply. He will. The fluorescent lights hummed in the silence. Outside the conference room, I could hear the sounds of a police station at night. Phones ringing, quiet conversations, the click of keyboards. Normal sounds from a normal night, except nothing about this night was normal. Okay, I said. Tell me what to do. Agent Torres smiled for the first time since I'd entered the room. First, you're going to go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow morning, you're going to go to work like everything is normal. When Reed calls, you're going to sound scared but receptive. You're going to ask questions about the payment process. Express concern about how to liquidate assets without raising flags. Make him explain his system. And if he gets suspicious, he won't. Remember, he's done this 6 times successfully. He thinks he knows exactly how this plays out. You're going to be just another scared woman willing to pay to protect everything she's worked for. Detective Morrison's expression softened slightly. The difference is, this time, we'll be listening. They spent the next hour coaching me on what to say, what questions to ask, how to sound convincingly frightened without overdoing it. They gave me the recording device, a sleek piece of technology that would capture everything and automatically upload it to a secure server, and made me practice activating it until I could do it reflexively. By the time I left the station, dawn was breaking over Seattle, painting the sky in shades of gray and rose. I drove home through empty streets, my mind spinning with everything I'd learned. 7 women, almost 3 years of fraud, millions of dollars stolen, and I was going to be the one who stopped him. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it that morning. A lifetime ago, it seemed now. Coffee cup still in the sink. Bed unmade. The engagement ring box still sitting on my dresser where I'd left it when I'd finally taken the ring off 2 weeks ago. I picked up the box, opened it, looked at the diamond catching the early morning light. 2 carats, emerald cut, set in platinum. Marcus had taken me to a fancy restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay to propose, had gotten down on one knee in front of everyone. I'd cried happy tears. The other diners had applauded. It had all been a performance. I closed the box and put it in my nightstand drawer. Later, I'd figure out what to do with it. Right now, I needed sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling and thought about the phone call that would come today. Marcus, smooth and confident, explaining how I could make all my problems disappear. Marcus, who'd shared my bed and my life and my dreams while simultaneously planning my destruction. At 8 a.m., I gave up on sleep and took a long shower. I dressed carefully in a navy suit and heels, my armor for the day ahead. I looked at myself in the mirror. Professional, capable, in control. No one looking at me would guess that my life was imploding. Perfect. Priya looked up in surprise when I walked into the office at 9 a.m. "You're here early. I thought you were meeting with the detective at 10. "Meeting's been rescheduled," I said. "Can you hold my calls until noon?" "Everything except—" I paused, knowing what I was about to say would set things in motion. "Everything except Marcus. If he calls, put him through immediately." Priya's expression tightened with concern. "Olivia, I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" "Because it seems like—" "Priya." I softened my tone. "I need you to trust me on this. Can you do that?" She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. "Always." The morning crawled by. I tried to focus on work, on the dozens of emails and decisions that couldn't wait, but my mind kept drifting to the small recording device in my jacket pocket. At 11:30 I gave up and just sat at my desk, watching the clock. 11:45, 11:52, 11:58. At exactly noon, my phone rang. Marcus's number. I pressed the button on the recording device in my pocket, let it ring twice, then answered. "Hello?" "Olivia." His voice was all concern now, warm and caring. "Have you thought about what we discussed?" "I've thought about nothing else." "And?" I took a breath, remembering everything Agent Torres and Detective Morrison had coached me to say. Sound scared but cooperative. Ask questions. Get details. "I need you to help me understand something," I said, letting my voice shake just slightly. "If I pay back the vendors, if I settle everything, how do I know the police won't still come after me? You said there are documents with my signature. I'll destroy them, all of them. The moment the last vendor is paid, everything disappears. You'll be completely clear." "But how can I trust that? How do I know you won't keep copies? Use them later?" A pause. I could almost hear him recalculating, adjusting his approach. "Because I care about you, Olivia. Despite everything I do. I don't want to see you go to prison. This whole thing got out of hand. I just need to make it right and move on with my life. With Destiny? That's over. She's too unstable, I see that now. This whole situation made me realize." His voice dropped, became intimate. "We were good together, weren't we? Maybe once this is all settled, we could—" "Focus, Marcus." I cut him off, channeling genuine anger into my voice. "I need specifics. $800,000 is a lot of money to liquidate without raising flags. My accountant will have questions." "You don't involve your accountant. This needs to be quiet." "Then how?" "Wire transfers. Multiple accounts, small amounts, spread out over a week or two. I'll give you the account numbers and routing information. You make the transfers look like normal business expenses. Consulting fees, vendor payments, that kind of thing. Nothing that will trigger an audit. And if someone checks, they won't. Not if you're smart about it. You've been running this company for how long? 12 years? You know how to make money move without attracting attention." He was trying to implicate me further, making it sound like I regularly engaged in financial irregularities. Smart. Disgusting, but smart. "What if I can't get the full amount together by your deadline?" "How much can you get?" "Maybe 600,000 if I liquidate some investments. But Marcus, that will take time. Markets are volatile right now, and if I dump everything at once—" 2 weeks. That's all the time I can give you. After that, the reporter starts asking questions. I need the account information. Not over the phone. Too risky. We'll meet tomorrow, somewhere public. I'll give you everything you need then. And Olivia? Come alone. No police, no lawyers, no wire. If I even suspect you're setting me up, the deal's off, and I go straight to the media." My heart was pounding. A meeting. That was perfect. That was exactly what Agent Torres had said they needed. Where and when? Pike Place Market, tomorrow at 2 p.m. Meet me by the fish throwers. Bring a list of how much you can liquidate and when. Marcus and Olivia, I really am sorry it came to this. You were always my favorite. He hung up. I sat very still, the recording device hot in my pocket. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Agent Torres the message we'd agreed on. Fish are jumping. His response came within seconds. We'll be there. My intercom buzzed. Priya's voice tight with worry. Olivia, there's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent and won't leave. It's Destiny. I closed my eyes. Of course it was. Because nothing about this nightmare could be simple. Send her in. The woman who walked through my door looked nothing like the confident voice on the phone 3 weeks ago. Destiny was younger than I'd expected. Maybe 25, with bleached blonde hair and tired eyes. She was pretty in a hard-worn way, like someone who'd learned early that the world wasn't kind to women who trusted too easily. I'm sorry, she said before I could speak. I know I shouldn't be here, but I didn't know where else to go. Marcus. Her voice cracked. He came back this morning. He said terrible things. He said if I talked to the police again, he'd tell them I was part of it from the beginning. That I knew it was fraud, and did it anyway. Did you talk to Detective Morrison? She nodded. Last night, like you said. I told her everything. Every call I made, every email I sent. She was nice about it. Said I'd probably be okay if I cooperated. But then, Marcus. She pressed a hand to her mouth, fighting tears. He knows things about me. Bad things. Mistakes I made when I was younger. He said he'd make sure everyone knew. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Sit down. Start from the beginning. She sat, clutching a worn purse like a lifeline, and told me a story that was sickeningly familiar. Met Marcus at a bar where she worked. He'd been charming, attentive, different from the usual men who hit on her. They'd dated for a month before he'd mentioned his business idea, how he needed someone he could trust to help him with administrative work. She'd been flattered, desperate to be useful, willing to believe that someone like him could actually care about someone like her. I loved him, she said simply. I thought he loved me. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're a victim. We both are. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. The detective showed me pictures. Other women? He did this to all of them? 7 of us, that they know of. Jesus. She was quiet for a moment then. Are you going to help them catch him? I thought about Agent Torres's warning, the public scrutiny, the damage to my reputation, the possibility that even after Marcus was arrested, some mud would stick. But I also thought about the 6 women in those photos, and the unknown number of others who might come after us if we didn't stop him now. Yes, I said. I am. And I think you should too. Me? What can I do? First, you can tell me everything he said this morning. Every word. Every threat. Then, I paused. An idea forming. Then you can help me make sure he doesn't suspect what's coming. We talked for an hour. I learned about Marcus's habits, his patterns, his tells, the way he got cocky when he thought he'd won, the way he underestimated women, especially women like Destiny, who he thought were beneath him intellectually. He thinks I'm stupid, she said flatly. He always has. Made jokes about it. Said I was lucky I was pretty because I'd never make it on my brains alone. That's his weakness, I said. He underestimates people. Let's use that. By the time Destiny left my office, we had a plan. It was risky, possibly illegal, definitely the kind of thing that would make Agent Torres tell me to back off and let the professionals handle it. But I'd spent 12 years building my company from nothing, navigating a male-dominated industry that had tried to break me at every turn. I knew how to take calculated risks, and I knew how to win. I called Agent Torres and told him about the meeting Marcus had set up for tomorrow at Pike Place Market. I did not tell him about Destiny's visit or what we'd discussed. Some things were better kept private until the right moment. We'll have agents positioned throughout the market, Torres said. Plain clothes, completely invisible. The moment he hands you the account information, we move in. What if he runs? He won't have the chance. Dr. Chen, I want to emphasize how important it is that you follow our instructions exactly. No improvisation. No trying to handle things yourself. Reed is dangerous. He may not be violent, but he's desperate. And desperate people are unpredictable. I understand. Good. Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow's going to be intense. But I didn't rest. Instead, I spent the evening going through every document Marcus had ever touched, every contract he'd handled, every piece of paperwork he'd convinced me to sign. I found 3 more forms I didn't remember: powers of attorney, business registrations, bank signature cards. All notarized, all bearing my signature or a very good forgery. He'd been planning this for at least 18 months, maybe longer. Around midnight, Priya texted me. Still at work? Always, I replied. You know this isn't your fault, right? Whatever he did, whatever he made it look like you did, it's not your fault. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Thanks. That means more than you know. Want me to come in early tomorrow? Moral support before the big meeting? That would be great. I finally left the office at 2 a.m., drove home through streets that were becoming uncomfortably familiar at this hour. My apartment felt cold and empty. I'd asked Marcus to move out 3 weeks ago, and he'd taken everything that was his, and quite a bit that wasn't. The bookshelf in the living room had gaps where his books had been. The closet in the bedroom was half empty. Even the kitchen felt wrong, missing the cooking equipment he'd insisted on buying with my credit card. I lay in bed and tried to prepare myself for tomorrow. Tried to imagine facing Marcus in public, pretending to negotiate my own blackmail while FBI agents watched from the shadows. Tried to picture the moment when they would move in, when Marcus would realize he'd finally been caught. But my mind kept drifting to Destiny, to her admission that she'd loved him. I'd never said those words to Marcus, I realized. In 3 years together, engaged for 6 months, I'd never told him I loved him. I'd said I cared about him, that I wanted to build a life with him. But love? That word had always caught in my throat. Maybe some part of me had always known. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m., a text from an unknown number. Good luck today. Don't let him intimidate you. You've got this. D. Destiny. I smiled despite everything and sent back a simple, thank you. The morning passed in a blur of preparations. Priya came in early as promised, brought coffee and pastries, and a fierce determination to make sure I ate something. Detective Morrison called to review the plan one more time. Agent Torres sent a text with final instructions. At 1:30 p.m., I left my office and headed toward Pike Place Market. Seattle's most famous landmark was crowded with tourists and locals, all jostling for space among the fish vendors and craft stalls and street performers. The smell of fresh seafood and coffee mixed with the salt air from Elliott Bay. It was loud, chaotic, perfect for a covert meeting, and perfect for an arrest. I spotted Marcus at exactly 2 p.m., standing near the fish-throwing display where vendors tossed salmon back and forth to entertain the crowds. He looked relaxed, confident, wearing expensive sunglasses and a casual button-down shirt. No one looking at him would guess he was a career criminal. Olivia. He smiled when he saw me, the same warm smile he'd used when proposing. You came? Did you think I wouldn't? I wasn't sure. You've always been unpredictable. He gestured toward the waterfront. Walk with me. Too many people here. We walked along the pier, the recording device in my pocket capturing every word. Around us, tourists took photos and seagulls screamed and the afternoon sun glinted off the water. Somewhere in this crowd, FBI agents were watching. "Do you have the information?" I asked. "Do you have the money? I can get 600,000 in 10 days, another 200,000 within a month after that." He nodded, seeming satisfied. "That'll work. I'll give you 3 account numbers. Split the money evenly among them. Make the transfers look legitimate. Can you do that?" "Yes." He pulled out his phone, started typing. "I'm texting you the account information now. Memorize it. Then delete the message. Once the money's transferred, we're done. You never hear from me again." My phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, saw 3 account numbers with routing information. Everything Agent Torres needed. "What about the documents?" I asked. "The ones that implicate me?" "I'll destroy them. You have my word." "Your word?" I couldn't keep the bitterness out of my voice. "Because that's worth so much." His expression hardened. "You think you're better than me? You built that company by being ruthless, by crushing anyone who got in your way. At least I'm honest about what I am. You're a con artist who preys on women who trust you. And you're a CEO who built an empire on the backs of people who trusted you. We're not so different, Olivia. The only difference is, you're legal about it." Something in his words struck me, twisted in my chest. Was he right? Had I built my success by being just as ruthless, just as willing to exploit trust? No. I pushed the thought away. Marcus was trying to manipulate me even now, trying to make me doubt myself. That was what he did. "We're done here," I said. "Once the money's transferred, I never want to see you again." "Agreed." He turned to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you were the best one, the smartest. I almost thought about keeping you around for real." "Almost?" He smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. "Nobody's that good." Then he walked away, disappearing into the crowd of tourists and vendors. I stood very still, watching him go, waiting for the signal from Agent Torres that they were moving in. But the signal didn't come. Seconds stretched into minutes. The crowd flowed around me. Marcus's figure got smaller, blending into the mass of people. My phone buzzed. "Agent Torres." "Lost visual. Did he pass you anything physical?" "No," I texted back. "Just sent account info to my phone. Hold position. We're trying to locate him." But I already knew they wouldn't find him. Marcus was too good at this, too practiced at disappearing. He'd slipped away somehow, merged into the crowd in a way that their surveillance hadn't anticipated. My phone rang. "Marcus. Did you really think I wouldn't be careful?" His voice was amused. "I've been watching you since you got here, Olivia. Saw you checking your phone a little too carefully. Saw the way you position yourself with clear sight lines. You're working with the cops." My blood went cold. "Marcus, here's what's going to happen. You're going to transfer that money anyway. Because if you don't, every piece of evidence I have goes public. And trust me, even if the cops eventually prove it's fake, the damage will be done. Your company, your reputation, your precious career, all of it will be destroyed. They'll catch you. Maybe. Eventually. But by then, I'll have a new identity and a new life somewhere very far from here. And you'll be left dealing with the aftermath." He paused. "You know what the really funny thing is? I did like you. You were different from the others. Smarter. Stronger. I could have built something real with you. But you didn't." "No," he agreed. "I didn't. Because in the end, you were just another Mark. Just another successful woman who thought she was too smart to be conned. Turns out, you're exactly smart enough to be dangerous, but not smart enough to see it coming." He hung up. I stood on the Pike Place Market Pier, surrounded by hundreds of people, and felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Agent Torres and Detective Morrison appeared beside me within minutes, their expressions grim. "He made you," Torres said flatly. Somehow he spotted the surveillance. What happens now? Now we use the account information he sent you to track him. It won't be fast, but we'll find him eventually. And in the meantime, Detective Morrison touched my arm gently. In the meantime, you go on with your life. You don't pay him anything. You document everything. You prepare for the possibility that he'll make good on his threats. He will, I said. He's done it 6 times before. Why would this time be different? They didn't have an answer for that. I walked back to my office in a daze, barely seeing the streets I passed through. Priya took one look at my face and didn't ask questions, just brought me water and quietly closed my office door to give me privacy. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Another one sent from my address to every contact I had, every business associate, every colleague. The subject line, "The Truth About Chen Medical Solutions." I didn't need to open it to know what it would say. Marcus had released his fake evidence, doctored documents, forged signatures, manufactured email conversations, all designed to make it look like I'd been complicit in the fraud. Maybe even the mastermind. Over the next hour, my phone exploded. Calls from confused vendors, emails from concerned business partners, text messages from friends asking if everything was okay. A voicemail from my mother wondering why the Seattle Times had called her asking for comment about my alleged involvement in a fraud scheme. It was happening, exactly as Marcus had promised. He was destroying my reputation, my credibility, everything I'd spent 12 years building. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. Except there was. I pulled out my phone and called Destiny. "Is it done?" she asked when she answered. "Phase 1. He got away, but he took the bait. Now we move to Phase 2. Are you sure about this? What you're asking me to do? I'm sure. Are you?" A long pause. Then, "Yes. He destroyed your life. He destroyed mine. Turnabout's fair play. Remember everything we discussed. Timing is crucial." I remember. I hung up and opened my laptop. Time to go to war. The next 24 hours would determine everything: my company's future, my reputation, possibly my freedom. Marcus thought he'd won, thought he'd destroyed me the way he'd destroyed 6 other women before me. He was about to learn that I was nothing like those other women. I was something much more dangerous. A woman with nothing left to lose and the resources to fight back. End of part 1. The Seattle Times article hit at 6 a.m. the next morning. "Local CEO implicated in multi-state fraud scheme," screamed the headline, accompanied by a professional photo of me from our company website. The reporter had done their homework, weaving together Marcus's manufactured evidence with just enough legitimate facts to make the story believable. By 7 a.m., my board of directors was calling an emergency meeting. By 8 a.m., 3 major clients had suspended their contracts pending investigation. By 9 a.m., my company's stock had dropped 18%. Marcus was burning my life to the ground, exactly as he'd promised. I sat in my home office and watched it happen with an eerie calm. This was the price of fighting back. Agent Torres had warned me. Detective Morrison had warned me. But knowing it was coming and experiencing it were 2 different things. My phone rang. David, my brother. "Jesus Christ, Olivia, what's happening? Mom's getting calls from reporters. They're asking about the family business, about Dad." "It's all fake," I said quietly. "Marcus is trying to destroy me because I won't pay his blackmail." "Then fight back. Sue him, tell your side of the story." "I am fighting back." Just not the way he expects. What does that mean? It means trust me. And tell Mom not to talk to any reporters. Refer them all to my lawyer. I hung up before he could ask more questions. My lawyer, Jonathan Chen, no relation, had already sent cease and desist letters to the Seattle Times and was preparing defamation suits. But lawsuits took time, and in the meantime, The damage was spreading like wildfire. Another email came in, this one from one of my oldest vendors. Dr. Chen, in light of recent allegations, we're suspending all shipments until this matter is resolved. I closed my laptop. Phase 1 was complete. Marcus thought he'd won. Thought he'd reduced me to rubble while he disappeared with Destiny's help into whatever new identity he'd prepared. He had no idea what was coming. At exactly 10 a.m., I received a text from Destiny. Package delivered. I smiled for the first time in 24 hours. 3 days ago, when Destiny had come to my office in tears, we'd hatched a plan that was risky, possibly illegal, and absolutely necessary. Marcus had taught us both a valuable lesson. Sometimes you had to get dirty to win. Destiny had gone back to Marcus yesterday, playing the scared accomplice perfectly. She'd told him she was terrified the police would arrest her, that she'd do anything to avoid jail. She'd begged him to take her with him when he left Seattle. And Marcus, arrogant and convinced of his own superiority, had agreed. What he didn't know was that Destiny had been recording everything. Every conversation, every instruction, every detail of his escape plan. And this morning, she'd handed him a laptop. A gift. She'd said, so he could set up his new identity properly once they reached their destination. That laptop had more surveillance software than a CIA safe house. My phone buzzed. Agent Torres. Dr. Chen, we need to talk. Now. His tone made my stomach clench. What's wrong? Destiny Patterson is missing. She checked out of her apartment yesterday. Told her landlord she was moving out of state. We think she's with Reed. She is, I said calmly. Silence. Then, dangerously quiet. Explain. She's helping me. We have a plan. Dr. Chen, I specifically told you not to take matters into your own hands. If Patterson is with Reed voluntarily, if you're using her to... To what? To catch the man who's destroyed 7 women's lives? The man who your investigation let slip through your fingers yesterday? That's not fair. Neither is watching my company collapse while Marcus disappears to find victim number 8. I took a breath, forced myself to stay calm. Agent Torres, I understand your concerns, but Destiny is a grown woman making her own choices, and those choices include making sure Marcus doesn't hurt anyone else. Where are they? I don't know yet, but I will soon. I hung up before he could threaten me with obstruction of justice charges. The truth was, I did know where they were. Or at least, I knew where they were heading. Marcus had booked 2 tickets to Vancouver under false names. Destiny had sent me photos of the confirmation emails. From there, they'd planned to cross into the interior of British Columbia, where Marcus had a cabin under one of his many aliases. What Marcus didn't know was that the laptop Destiny had given him was tracking their location in real time, recording every keystroke, every password, every account number he accessed, every piece of evidence we needed to prove the full scope of his fraud. My phone chimed with a notification. The tracking software showing Marcus's location, a small town called Squamish, about an hour north of Vancouver. They'd stopped, probably for the night. I opened the encrypted chat Destiny and I had set up. She'd already sent a message. At motel. He's accessing accounts. Getting everything. Be careful, I typed back. Don't take any risks. Too late for that, she replied. Already risked everything. She wasn't wrong. If this went sideways, Destiny could face serious legal consequences. Unauthorized surveillance, possibly kidnapping charges if Marcus claimed she'd coerced him somehow. But she'd insisted, her voice fierce when we'd planned this. He needs to pay for what he did to all of us. The next message came an hour later. He knows something's wrong, getting suspicious. Says the laptop is running slow. My heart rate spiked. If Marcus discovered the surveillance software, everything would fall apart. Play dumb, I typed. Tell him it's just a cheap laptop, you couldn't afford better. Trying, He's angry, saying I'm useless. I could picture it. Marcus's charming mask slipping, revealing the cruel contempt underneath. The same contempt he'd shown me in those final phone calls. Get out if you need to, I sent. Your safety matters more than catching him. But Destiny didn't respond. 10 minutes passed. 20. I stared at my phone, willing it to chime with another message. Nothing. I called Agent Torres back. They're in Squamish, British Columbia. Small motel called the Mountain View Inn. Destiny's with him, but I think she's in trouble. How do you know this? Does it matter? Can you get someone there? Canadian jurisdiction. I'll have to contact the RCMP, explain the situation. There's no time for bureaucracy. She could be in danger right now. Then maybe you shouldn't have sent a civilian into a situation with a known criminal. His frustration finally broke through. Dr. Chen, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but you're making this worse. Stand down. Let us handle it. The way you handled it at Pike Place Market? I regretted the words immediately, but it was too late to take them back. I'll contact the RCMP, Torres said coldly. Stay out of it. He hung up. I sat in my office and felt helpless for the first time since this nightmare began. Destiny was in trouble, possibly in danger, and I'd put her there. My brilliant plan to catch Marcus and clear my name was falling apart, and there was nothing I could do. My laptop chimed. New activity from the tracking software. Marcus was accessing his banking accounts, moving money between them in a pattern I recognized from the fraud investigation, small transfers designed to obscure the trail. But the software was capturing everything: account numbers, routing information, passwords. Then something unexpected. Marcus opened an email program and started composing messages. The keylogger captured every word. To John Whitmore, Seattle Times. Appreciate your coverage of the Chen situation. If you're interested in more information about corporate fraud in the pharmaceutical industry, I have sources that might interest you. Meet me in Vancouver next week? He was trying to spin the narrative further, position himself as a whistleblower rather than a criminal. Classic Marcus. Another email, this one to someone named Patricia Reeves. Package delivered as promised. Payment pending. Will confirm once I'm settled in new location. Package? Payment? I screenshot the email and forwarded it to Torres with a brief message. This might interest you. My phone rang immediately. What am I looking at? Torres asked. I think Marcus is selling information, corporate espionage maybe, or selling his methods to other fraudsters. Christ, this is bigger than we thought. Papers shuffled in the background. The RCMP is sending officers to the motel, ETA 20 minutes. But Dr. Chen, I need you to tell me everything. No more secrets, no more games. What exactly did you and Patterson set up? I told him. The tracking software, the keylogger, the plan to gather evidence while Marcus thought he was safe. Torres listened without interrupting, and I could hear him typing rapidly. Legally, this is a nightmare, he said when I finished. Unauthorized surveillance, possible entrapment arguments. But it's evidence. Evidence that might not be admissible in court. Defense attorneys will have a field day with this. Then use it to build a parallel case. You know where the money is now, what accounts he's using. The emails show intent, pattern of behavior. You can get warrants for everything based on this information. Silence, then grudgingly. You're not wrong. But Dr. Chen, if Patterson gets hurt, I know, it's on me. We stayed on the line, neither speaking, as minutes crawled by. I watched the tracking software, watched Marcus continue to access accounts, move money, cover his tracks. He had no idea the walls were closing in. My phone chimed with a new message from Destiny. I'm okay. Locked myself in bathroom. He knows something's wrong, but not what. Relief flooded through me. RCMP on the way. Stay locked in. Don't come out until police arrive. He's banging on the door. Saying if I don't come out, he'll leave without me. Let him. Your safety is what matters. No. Her response was immediate. If he runs, you'll never catch him. He'll just do this to someone else. Destiny? Don't. But she'd already sent another message. Tell the police to hurry. I'm opening the door. Torres! I shouted into the phone. Destiny's about to confront him. Where are the police? 5 minutes out. Tell her to stay put. She's not listening. I watched helplessly as the tracking software showed new activity. Marcus was typing frantically now, opening files, copying data. He knew something was wrong, was trying to secure his assets before running. Then the screen went dark. Torres, I lost the signal. The RCMP just pulled up to the motel. Hold on. Static on the line, muffled voices. Then a different voice. This is Sergeant Davies, RCMP. We have 2 individuals in custody. Male and female, both cooperative. My legs went weak. Is the woman okay? She's fine. Shaken up but unharmed. The male tried to flee through the bathroom window but didn't get far. A pause. He had a significant amount of cash on him and multiple passports. Also a laptop that he tried to destroy before we secured it. Torres came back on the line. Dr. Chen, it's over. We got him. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still have to build a case. And like I said, the evidence you gathered is problematic. But combined with what Patterson can testify to and what we recover from his legitimate accounts, we might have enough. What happens now? Now Reed gets extradited back to the US to face charges. Patterson will need to give a full statement, and honestly, she might face some legal consequences for the surveillance. But given that she was a victim herself and cooperated with the investigation, I'll push for immunity. And me? Torres was quiet for a moment. That depends. Can you prove the documents Reed released were forgeries? My forensic accountants are already on it. We'll have a full report by end of week showing none of those transactions actually occurred through our legitimate accounts. Good. Then we focus on clearing your name while building the case against Reed. His tone softened slightly. Dr. Chen, what you did was reckless and could have ended very badly. But I understand why you did it. These cases are frustrating for victims because the system moves so slowly. Just promise me you'll let us handle it from here. I promise. I hung up and sat in the silence of my office. Outside, Seattle was waking up to another gray November day. My phone was still exploding with messages, reporters, colleagues, concerned friends, but I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and started drafting a statement. Not a defensive explanation or a desperate denial, but a clear, factual account of what had happened. Marcus Reed had targeted me, defrauded my company, and attempted to destroy my reputation when I refused to pay his blackmail. The evidence would prove my innocence. Justice would be served. It took 3 hours to write, and another 2 for Jonathan to review and approve. We released it simultaneously to all major media outlets, along with a press packet containing documentation of my cooperation with law enforcement and preliminary findings from the Forensic Accounting Review. The response was immediate. The Seattle Times issued a retraction within an hour. My board of directors called an emergency meeting to reinstate their full support. Clients who'd suspended contracts began reaching out to apologize, but the vindication felt hollow. My company had still taken a hit. My reputation had still been damaged. And somewhere in a Vancouver hospital, Destiny was giving statements to police about how she'd been manipulated and used by a man who'd claimed to love her. 3 days later, I flew to Vancouver. Destiny looked smaller in person than she had in my office, curled up in a chair at the coffee shop where we'd agreed to meet. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail and she wore minimal makeup. She looked young and tired and scared. "You came," she said when I sat down across from her. "Of course I came. Are you okay?" "Physically, Yeah. Emotionally? She shrugged. I keep replaying everything, wondering how I could have been so stupid, so blind. You weren't stupid. Neither was I. Neither were any of the other women he targeted. Marcus is good at what he does. That's what makes him dangerous. She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Will I go to jail? No. Agent Torres is pushing for full immunity in exchange for your testimony. And I've hired Jonathan to represent you if needed. He's expensive, but he's good. I can't afford. You don't need to. Consider it paid. Why would you do that? I thought about the question. Why was I helping the woman who'd answered my phone 3 weeks ago, who'd laughed while telling me my fiancé was leaving me? The woman who'd unknowingly helped commit fraud using my company's information? Because you helped me when you didn't have to, I said finally. You risked everything to make sure Marcus couldn't hurt anyone else. That took courage. Destiny's eyes filled with tears. He told me you were weak, that you'd crumble under pressure. But you're not weak at all, are you? I'm terrified. My company almost collapsed. My reputation might never fully recover. I lie awake at night wondering what I missed, what I should have seen. I leaned forward. But I'm still here. We're both still here. And Marcus is in custody facing multiple federal charges. That's not weakness. We talked for another hour. I learned that Destiny had grown up in foster care, had spent her 20s bouncing between jobs and bad relationships, had been working as a bartender when Marcus walked into her life. She'd thought he was her ticket to something better, to stability and love, and a future that didn't involve scraping by paycheck to paycheck. I wanted to matter to someone, she said softly. I wanted to be important. You are important. What you did, gathering evidence, helping catch him, that mattered. 7 women's lives are better because of you. Future victims were saved because of you. But I was part of it. I made those calls, sent those emails, under false pretenses. You were a victim, Destiny. Don't let him take that from you, too. Before I left, I gave her my lawyer's number and the contact information for a therapist who specialized in helping fraud victims. I also gave her my personal cell number. If you need anything, call me. I mean it. She hugged me, sudden and fierce, and whispered thank you against my shoulder. The flight back to Seattle gave me time to think. About Marcus, about the investigation, about what came next. Agent Torres had warned me that the trial would be brutal, that Marcus's lawyers would try to paint me and Destiny as vindictive ex-lovers conspiring against him. They'd scrutinize every detail of our involvement in his capture, question our motives, suggest we'd manufactured evidence, but they'd also have to contend with 6 other victims, years of documented fraud, and Marcus's own digital trail. The laptop Destiny had given him had captured everything, and while some of it might not be admissible, it had given law enforcement the roadmap they needed to build an airtight case. 2 months later, Marcus Reed pled guilty to 17 counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and racketeering. The evidence was simply too overwhelming to fight. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison, with mandatory restitution to all victims. I attended the sentencing hearing. So did Destiny and 2 of the other women Marcus had defrauded. We sat together in the courtroom and watched as the judge delivered the sentence, listened as Marcus made a brief statement claiming he'd made mistakes, but never intended real harm. The judge wasn't sympathetic. Mr. Reed, you systematically targeted successful women, gained their trust, and exploited that trust to steal hundreds of thousands of dollars. You destroyed reputations, damaged businesses, and left emotional scars that will take years to heal. This wasn't a mistake. This was calculated, predatory behavior. After the hearing, we gathered outside the courthouse. 7 women who'd loved the same man, who'd believed his lies, who'd paid the price for his greed. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch. Some of us would, I knew. Others would prefer to move on and forget. Destiny pulled me aside as we were leaving. "I got a job," she said, almost shyly. "Administrative assistant at a medical supply company. Entry level, nothing fancy, but it's a start." "That's wonderful." "And I'm taking night classes. Business administration. I figure if I'm going to help run companies someday, I should actually know what I'm doing." I smiled. "You're going to be great. I learned from the best." She hesitated, then added, "You could have destroyed me, you know. Could have let me take the fall for everything. But you didn't. You saved me instead." "We saved each other," I corrected. Back in Seattle, life slowly returned to normal. Chen Medical Solutions recovered from the scandal, though it took months of patient relationship rebuilding with clients and vendors. My board stayed supportive once the truth came out, and we implemented new security protocols to prevent future fraud. I never wore my engagement ring again. I had it reset into a pendant, a reminder of lessons learned the hard way. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. And never, ever ignore the red flags, because you want so badly to believe in someone. 6 months after Marcus's sentencing, I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when Priya knocked on my door. "There's someone here to see you. Says it's personal." My stomach clenched. After everything with Marcus, unexpected visitors made me nervous. "Who is it?" "She says her name is Jennifer. Jennifer Morrison. She says you'll want to hear what she has to say." I didn't recognize the name, but something in Priya's tone made me curious. "Send her in." The woman who entered was in her mid-40s, professionally dressed, with tired eyes that reminded me of Detective Morrison. She carried a briefcase and moved with the careful confidence of someone who'd learned to guard herself. "Dr. Chen, thank you for seeing me. I'm Jennifer Morrison. No relation to the detective. I was victim number 3. I gestured for her to sit. "I'm sorry that happened to you." "It was 5 years ago. Phoenix. He called himself Michael Chen then, said we shared a last name, so it was fate." Her smile was bitter. "I paid him $400,000 to make the fraud charges go away. It destroyed my business. I had to start over from scratch." "I'm sorry," I said again, inadequately. "Don't be. I'm here because I wanted to thank you. You're the one who finally stopped him. You and Destiny. You did what the rest of us couldn't. It took both of us. And a lot of help from law enforcement. And courage. Don't minimize what you did." She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. "The other women, the ones Marcus victimized, we've been talking. We're forming a support organization for fraud victims, specifically those targeted through romantic relationships. We want to provide resources, legal advice, emotional support. Everything we wish we'd had." "That's incredible. We want you on the board, you and Destiny both, if she's willing. Your story, how you fought back, how you helped each other, it's powerful. It could help other women avoid the same mistakes we made." I thought about using my experience, my pain, to help others, about turning Marcus's destruction into something constructive. "I'd be honored," I said. We talked for another hour about their plans, their vision, the women they hoped to help. By the time Jennifer left, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: hope. That evening, I stood in my apartment, the same apartment Marcus had lived in, had stolen from, had used as a base for his fraud. I'd considered moving, starting fresh somewhere new, but that would have been letting him win, letting him drive me from my home. Instead, I'd redecorated. New furniture, new art, new energy. The engagement ring pendant hung in my jewelry box, rarely worn but never forgotten. A reminder that I'd survived, that I'd fought back, that I'd won. My phone chimed with a text from Destiny. "First day of finals. Wish me luck. You don't need luck, I replied. You've got this. She sent back a smiley face emoji and a heart. I smiled and poured myself a glass of wine, walked to my window overlooking the Seattle skyline. The city glittered in the darkness, full of possibility and danger in equal measure. Somewhere out there were other women like me and destiny, women being targeted by men like Marcus, women who didn't yet know they were marks. But now there would be resources to help them, a network of survivors who understood, a community built from our shared pain and our collective strength. Marcus had tried to destroy me. Instead, he'd forged me into something stronger. I raised my glass to my reflection in the window. A successful CEO, a fraud survivor, a woman who'd looked into the abyss and refused to blink. To new beginnings, I said softly, and I meant it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. The end.